All right, for the recording, welcome back. We are ACI Course 6, Class 1. It's September 5th, 2024. Let's gather our minds here as we usually do. Please bring your attention to your breath until you hear from me again. And now bring to mind that being who for you is a manifestation of ultimate love, ultimate compassion, ultimate wisdom, and see them there with you. They're gazing at you with their unconditional love for you. Smiling at you with their holy great compassion. Their wisdom radiates from them. A beautiful golden glow encompassing you in its light. It feels so wonderful to have them here with us. And then we hear them say, bring to mind someone you know who's hurting in some way. Feel how much you would like to be able to help them. Recognize how the worldly ways we try fall short. Wonderful it will be when we can also help them in some deep and ultimate way, a way through which they will go on to stop their distress forever. We're learning how that is possible. And so we turn our minds back to our precious holy being. We know that they know what we need to know, what we need to learn yet, what we need to do yet to become one who can help this other in this deep and ultimate way. And so we ask them, please teach us that. And they are so happy that we've asked. Of course, they agree. Our gratitude arises. We want to offer them something exquisite. And so we think of the perfect world they are teaching us how to create. We imagine we can hold it in our hands. And we offer it to them, following it with our promise to practice what they teach us, using our refuge prayer to make our promise. Here is the great earth, filled with fragrant incense and covered with a blanket of flowers. The great mountain, 4 lands, wearing the jewel of the sun and the moon. In my mind, I make them the paradise of a Buddha and offer it all to you. By this deed, may every living being experience the pure world. Idam Guru Ratna Mandala Kamyayatayami. I go for refuge until I am enlightened to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the highest community. Through the merit that I do in sharing this class and the rest, may we reach Buddhahood for the sake of every living being. I go for refuge until I am enlightened to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the highest community. Through the merit that I do in sharing this class and the rest, may we reach Buddhahood for the sake of every living being. I go for refuge until I am enlightened to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the highest community. Through the merit that I do in sharing this class and the rest, may all beings reach their total awakening for the benefit of every single other. Okay. So welcome everyone, especially the 2 new faces to me. I'm glad you made it. Hi, Mar and Jam. So for your benefit, I have certain requirements for my students, and that is that because I desperately want you to make completion karma, I insist that you do your homework and quiz from each class before the next class comes up. And you can either email it to me or show it to me on the camera, but I'd like to see it done. And the way I ask my students to do the homework is you do the homework, open book, use your notes, talk to other people, and then take the answer key and compare the answer key to your answers and mark your own paper. Be nice to yourself. Right? If you have to correct anything, take a half or 1 point off. If you leave the whole question blank, take 5 points off, but never more than that, right? So everybody should be doing well. Right? The score is not important. It's the try, review. Then study it all again, put the papers away, take your quiz, right? Close book. And then do the same. Get out the answer key, mark your answers, right? Give yourself a score. Be sure that on your homework paper, you have put down the date and time of at least one meditation session on the homework assignment. And if you're not trained in meditation, just sit down and think about it. That's enough. In the end, when we prepare our final exams, then we'll switch papers with another student. They'll grade our paper, we'll grade theirs, right? Just to keep it a little bit official. And at the end, we'll set a date for the submission of the final exam so that all your papers, everything is all done, get submitted to our TA, who's Louisa, who's not here yet. And then she compiles it all and sends it to the dean, and the dean will email you your certificate. So we get it all packaged together. Certificates tend to come quite quickly instead of, this. I know it took one of my certificates came like 3 years later after having completed the whole thing. So it's like, we got a good system here. Your job is to do your part, right? And the idea is review, 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 and then see yourself complete. That's what I want, the complete. Okay. And these other ladies all know me. I won't bite your head off if you don't manage to do it because, chaos happened, but try really hard, please. And everybody will help you if you need help. All right. Then one thing to my previous students, would you guys email me separately and tell me exactly which courses you have yet to complete? As I'm trying to look at my 10-year schedule, and I'm filling in fast, actually. So I kind of need to know where I'm going with different groups at different times, right? So that would help me to put everything into perspective. Then still some housekeeping for this course 6. It's, they're all special, but this one's special amongst the special. And when Geshe-la taught it the first time, he made this really clear point to his students that what was happening in that series of classes was like a transmission, a download. And that previous classes, people had questions, they were debating, right? There was a lot of on the topic, off the topic. And for this course 6, he said, hold your questions till the end of class, or even the end of the whole course, because he didn't want that interruption from this special thing that was happening as he transmitted this particular course material to his people. And the reason, he said, is that the ability to clearly and accurately carry forth the transmission of the wisdom teachings is so critical to bringing the right understanding to the West, to all of us, right? East, West, wherever we are. The shift from the monastic training having the deepest wisdom knowledge to bringing it out into the public at the same level of study, or almost the same level of study as the monastic. Geshe Michael was the first to do that in the 1990s. And then, fortunately, the one we know as Venerable Jigme, she asked her friend John Stillwell, who was in New York. Jigme was in California. I'd love to hear those teachings, but right, I'm here, not there. Would you ask that guy if he would record them? And they did. And as a result of having the recordings of the original ACI courses, we now have this ACI teacher training course. So the whole series is designed to teach us to teach others, to share it with others. And so this course 6 is the first in the 18 series where we are addressing wisdom. It's the first of the Prajnaparamita sutras. I'll talk about it more. And so our ability to share what we've learned is driven by the quality of our attention as we're hearing it and the quality of our doing our completion, like we just talked about, so that when it's our turn to share, we can do it from a pure lineage, a pure transmission. So the other thing he said about this course in particular is attend it, listen to it, study it with the state of mind of, I'm doing this so that I can share it with somebody else someday. You know, whether it'll be a formal class like this or together in your living room with your best friend, doesn't matter. But have that idea, I'm not just learning this for me, I'm learning it so that I can help others learn it too, right? And that little shift in perspective is really helpful, crucial, in fact, to what you'll hear coming out of my mouth. Okay, so when we set up the opening prayers each time, it'll be the same every single time. Kind of keep that in mind as you're thinking of this other person you're going to help. Think also, and I'm also going to help them by someday teaching them Diamond Cutter Sutra. All right. So this course, course 6, is the first of the perfection of wisdom teachings that we receive in the ACI Foundation courses. Most of us got started from having already heard the pen thing, right, in the 4x4. And then we got interested in understanding them more deeply, and we started into the ACI training. So we'd already heard about, you know, the punchline of everything comes from us. But technically, what we've been studying so far has not been everything, right? It's our seed. We've been in the first turning of the wheel, learning the details. So we're finally making it to second turning of the wheel, you know, where the teaching says all those things I taught you before, none of it has any nature. No, and our minds go, what? Nothing exists. And of course, that's not what it means, that nothing exists. But it means a very specific way in which things don't exist in the way we thought they did. And that mistaken perception turns out to be the cause of all our distress. Big ones, little ones, right down to getting older and dying. So Dhammapada Sutra, it was taught by Lord Buddha in the 500 BC timeframe. In the middle of that sutra, he says this odd thing. He says, you know, anybody who learns this sutra and understands it pretty well, they're going to have disasters in their life. And I don't know, he doesn't really go into it. He says that and then changes the subject. Geshe said in his experience, disasters do happen to people who are studying Diamond Cutter Sutra. And so he's learned to warn people. And the reason they seem to happen is that the 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 learning of the Diamond Cutter Sutra is such an extraordinary goodness that it somehow stirs up the yucky seeds that we have in us and gets them to bubble up to the top of the pot sooner than they otherwise would have. So if we've got, I don't know, a bunch of old stealing seeds, from when we were, I don't know, right? Naughty people, monkeys, right? Living in the edge of the city and you just stole everything from people. And you start studying Diamond Cutter Sutra. Those seeds ripening now might ripen as losing stuff. And it seems like people are stealing stuff from you and you can't get your needs met. And you go to the grocery store and they have every kind of peanut butter, but the kind you want, right? You just can't get your stuff that you want. And, we're not likely to go, whoa, that's happening because I'm studying Diamond Cutter Sutra. And we're even less likely to think, wow, better than a lifetime in hell, which if those seeds had been left to go longer, would end up as hungry ghost or hell being, right? Some really, really awful ripening versus I just can't get the peanut butter I want. Do you see? So in the course of these 6 weeks or so that we'll be studying together, don't be surprised if life seems to take these turns for the worse, and kind of be proud about it and try to be happy about it because we're burning them off instead of leaving them there, but also be a warrior about it because it's very likely that there'll be kinds of situations that interfere with your being able to get here or interfere with your ability to get your papers done or right things that are just getting in the way of learning more and more. So buckle down. In my personal experience, when I'm faced with some situation that I just like really don't want to do and I'm really resistant and I'm trying to make all kinds of reasons why not to do it, if I look at seeds and I go, okay, I'm willing, I'll take it on, I'll do it no matter what. Knock on wood, it's almost never the case that I have to actually do it, right? The sudden release of the resistance and struggle just changes the whole situation and never have to. So the obstacles from Diamond Cutter Sutra are the same. We can go, oh my gosh, I'm waiting for disaster. I don't want it to happen. Or we can say, okay, bring it on. And very likely nothing will happen. Nothing bad will happen to you. And that does not mean that you're not learning. It does not mean that you have no negative seeds. Maybe it does. I hope so for you. But so it's not a bad thing if bad things happen, and it's not a bad thing if bad things don't happen. You hear me? Okay. When Geshe-la was teaching this, it was live. And although they did the recordings weren't available, right, for weeks. So he said, don't miss, in this course, don't miss a class because you miss some of the transmission. But then, as in with other classes, if you absolutely have to miss, then listen to the recording before you come out. Anything you've missed, make it up before you show up in class again. For in-person, it's because you put somebody into a class who's not quite on the same page and it shifts it for everybody. And I think that's still true online for online classes as well. So if you do have to miss, be sure that you get the recording or the video and have a listen to it before you come back to the next class. And these ladies make it all available very swiftly. I'm really proud of that. All right. All right, so Diamond Cutter Sutra from Lord Buddha. Through the course of the career of Buddhism, from that time until now, there is a collection of writings, some that were finally written down that were attributed to Lord Buddha's actual teachings, and some that are commentaries to those teachings or commentaries to commentaries. And through the course of Buddhism in India, those original texts were apparently written in Sanskrit, and many of them got translated into Tibetan, into Chinese. And then at some point, most of those Sanskrit original texts were destroyed. So even by the time that the Sanskrit was going into Tibet, not all of the Sanskrit texts were still available. And they know that because of what is available. Those texts will sometimes mention sutras or commentaries that were in Sanskrit that nobody has anymore. Nobody knows what they are. So they've been mentioned, but they've not been available, in recent history. And then curious, the history is that even the Tibetan collection went on to get destroyed. And so it seemed like the Saramay Monastery collection of textbooks was gone for good until somebody went actually looking for them. And that's the organization we now know as Asian Legacy Library, and found a whole collection of amazing stuff in the St. Petersburg Library in Russia because of the connection with the Mongols, right, who'd taken over all that territory, who then became Buddhists. So, confusing story, but putting it all together, we have two existing or access to the Tibetan of two Sanskrit commentaries on the Diamond Cutter Sutra. One of them was written by one of those two great brothers, Master Vasubandhu and Master Asanga. I think we know about them. Master Vasubandhu wrote a commentary to Diamond Cutter Sutra. And then, so that's 350 AD, India. And then another one was by Master Kamalashila in about 750 AD, also an Indian pundit. Master Kamalashila was that meditation master who was invited to Tibet because Tibet was just getting its feet wet with meditation and Buddhism. And there was a Chinese monk in Tibet teaching meditation a certain way. And then there were others teaching meditation in a different way. And the way you would settle a disagreement is that the king would invite authorities on the matter, and the two authorities would debate, and the people would listen to the debate, and at some point, they'd say, okay, whose debate makes most sense? And the people would say that one. And then as a result, the king would say, okay, that one. And then all of the king's kingdom had to follow that one. So for the Tibetan, that one was Master Kamalashila. The Chinese monk was teaching a meditation practice where you try to blank your mind, to bring it right to nothing, believing that that would bring you to see ultimate reality. And Master Kamalashila's point was, no, actually the seeds that you plant in your mind trying to blank it out are probably seeds that will ripen you as a, rabbit or a cow or, right, something that where the mind is just blanked out, the intellect is blanked out. He said a more effective meditation is to have a meditation that's focusing on a virtuous object and very specifically moving your mind through a series of analyses like question answer that leads us to recognizing the true nature of things. And so Master Kamalashila won the debate, and as a result, the Tibetans learned this method, the method that we're trained in ACI 3, and the method will be experiencing at that meditation retreat in January if anybody's interested. And we'll be spending 10 days on just fixation and going through the 9 stages. All right. So I have vocabulary that I hope helps people. I don't like screen share because then I lose some of you on the screen. Let's see if I can get us all. Oh yeah, good. Perfect number. Right, so you don't really need this for your homework if you're doing your homework in English, which I did all mine in English. I'm language impaired. So here are words that I've already used. We'll see them again. Prajnaparamita Sutra, it means the perfection of wisdom teachings of Lord Buddha. Madhyamaka means middle way. And by definition, if we're studying Prajnaparamita, we are in the level of Buddhism called middle way, also called Mahayana, greater vehicle. Master Kamalashila, that's how you spell his name. Master Vasubandhu, that's how you spell his name. We are on now to the topic of the Diamond Cutter Sutra. And it's and the commentary that we're actually using to study from, because we are not studying from either Master Kamalashila's or Master Vasubandhu's. As it turns out, in 2015, Geshe Michael did choose to teach Master Kamalashila's Diamond Cutter Sutra commentary. And it turns out that commentary is not a word-by-word explanation of Diamond Cutter Sutra. It uses this sutra as a stepping off point for comparing mind-only school concepts of dependent origination and emptiness to the two higher schools' view of dependent origination and emptiness. And I think it took, I don't remember, 4 or 5, 6 or 7 class meetings to get through Master Kamala Sheila's Diamond Cutter commentary. And it's an extraordinary course. So, after you're done with your ACIs, if you want to dig in deeper, we have that, right? I have it up my sleeve to share. We are studying from a commentary that was written by a Tibetan, a commentary on the Diamond Cutter Sutra directly written by a Tibetan, and it's a Tibetan many of us are very familiar with, Choni Lama Drakpa Shidru, often just called Choni Lama. Choni is an area in the area that used to be called Tibet. It's where he's from. Lama means Lama. Drakpa Shedrup is his monk's name. His dates are 1675 to 1748. He wrote a large portion of the textbooks that are still used at Saramay Monastery training program. His writing style is very modern and easy to understand. Geshe Michael tells us, when you compare his writing to Tsongkhapa, it is much clearer and easier to understand. But to me, it's still, cryptic. It's often in the language of debate. And so you're never quite sure if what they've said is quite correct or not. It's very challenging to read. But he wrote this beautiful commentary to the Diamond Cutter Sutra called Tarlam Sewe Nima. Tarlam means path to freedom. Where is that? Here it is. Pathway to freedom. Now, the freedom we're talking about depends on the motivation of the student who's reading what we're talking about. If our motivation, if our capacity is like our belief is that I want to stop my own suffering forever. Like that's my biggest capacity. That's the best thing I think anybody can do, is to reach the end of their own suffering. Then Tarlam means the path to nirvana. But if you're a student who says, no, I believe that we're meant to become Buddhas ourselves, right? To reach that state of perfect love, perfect compassion, perfect wisdom, that's within our reach. That's my goal. Then Tarlam means the path to your Buddhahood. Same word, heard by a mind that has a different belief. So Diamond Cutter Sutra is a teaching meant for those who have the highest motivation. I want to reach my total Buddhahood so that I can help everybody reach there. But again, remember, not everybody believes that that's possible. So if you do, like, that's a big rejoiceable. It's a really great goodness of seeds to recognize, oh my gosh, not everybody believes like I do. So Choni Lama is a big believer, and he's writing about the Diamond Cutter Sutra to help us understand how to use it to guide us on this path. Tarlam. Sewe means to make clear, illuminate, like to shine the flashlight on the path at dark so that you can see where you're going. Sewe. And then Nima is the sun. So It's the sun that's shining the light on the path to our Buddhahood, is the name of his text. Sunlight on the path to freedom, Geshe Michael calls it. Quite beautiful. All right, so let me go back here. The title of the text, the sutra, in Sanskrit is Vajrachandika, and in Tibetan, Dorje Trupa. Vajra and Dorje is translated as diamond, but the literal meaning is Lord of Stones, meaning like the highest stone, the most important stone, the king of stones is diamond. And again, you could make a case for, like, who says I like emeralds better than diamond? But we'll see why diamond is considered the Lord of Stones and why we see it in the iconography, is that the right word, of Tibetan Buddhism. We see diamonds everywhere. They just don't look like this kind of diamond. They look like the Vajra. Dorje Tripa. It's very common to see the Diamond Cutters Sutra called the Diamond Sutra. And Geshe Michael just gets hopping mad about that because it's leaving out a really important piece of the title, which is Chadika or Chupa, which means to cut the diamond. And I'll get to shortly why that's so important. And it's critically important. So I would suggest that if you're ever within earshot of Geshe Michael and you happen to be talking about the Diamond Cutter Sutra, be sure you say Diamond Cutter Sutra and don't slip and call it the Diamond Sutra or he will explode. So, as in most sutras, Lord Buddha's sitting in meditation. So in this one, but the text of the Diamond Cutter says, Lord Buddha, he gets up, he brushes his teeth, he puts on his shawl, he gets his wisdom bowl, his begging bowl, and he goes to get breakfast. He goes begging. And he brings his food back, he eats it, he cleans up, he washes his feet, and he sits down into meditation in this beautiful garden. And then his disciples are there with them. Presumably, they've all done the same thing. And they're gathered around him. And I don't know, it seems a little funny to me. Lord Buddha's sitting in meditation. And somebody gets up and has a question to ask, And so this particular monk named Subhuti, he gets up, he drops his shawl from his shoulder, he leans down respectfully and says, "Oh, Lord Buddha." And he asks him these 3 questions. Like, to interrupt a Buddha in meditation, you've got to be kidding. But the thing is, Buddha's not going to teach unless he's asked, right? And we'll see later why that's true. And so this one we call Subhuti, Rabjor in Tibetan. The Tibetan tradition says, you know what? Subhuti is actually the Bodhisattva Manjushri, pretending to be a common monk so that there's somebody in the crowd that knows what to ask. Like the rest of us there were too ignorant or too nervous to go to the Buddha and say, to ask a question. We don't know what to ask. I would have asked something like, what's the best day to do my shopping? Like some stupid worldly question. But Subhuti knows what to ask to get Buddha to answer the question, knowing that that's what the people there need to hear. So Subhuti makes this question, and he says it's 3 questions actually. Jitar mepagi, jitar drupagi, and jitar sem sevagi. It means jitar mepagi. How shall they live? So the lead in is for those who have entered well into the way of a bodhisattva. How shall they live? Jitar drupargi. How shall they practice? And jitar samsevagi. Sorry, that should be a W. That was sounding funny. Sevagi. There. How shall they hold their mind? And Buddha says, Lexo. Well, good question. Good question, Subhuti. Like, thank you for asking that question, because that's exactly what I wanted to talk about. But I couldn't talk about it without somebody asking. So now let's talk about it. And the rest of the sutra, what comes to be known as the sutra, is Lord Buddha and Subhuti having this question answer session about these 3 topics. But it doesn't come out as, okay, first let's talk about how they should live. Then let's talk about how they should practice. Then let's talk about how they keep their thoughts. He goes off on this like hard to follow trip that in one moment it's apparent he's talking about dependent origination and emptiness. And in the next moment, he's talking about making merit. Like, how much merit would you make if you did this? The Buddha will answer, oh, it would be a lot. And then Lord Buddha says, yeah, but it's nothing compared to studying Diamond Cutter Sutra. And then he asks, how big do you think a body could grow? Like really weird stuff. Buddha asks Subhuti. So there's this conversation going on that the rest of us are listening to. And fortunately, because we have commentaries and teachers who give commentaries to commentaries, we can figure out the connection between Lord Buddha's apparently skipping subject matters to see how it's all rolled together, answering these 3 questions. So that's where we're going with this course on Diamond Cutter Sutra. We don't actually go into the sutra and look at the verses. That's what we would do in Kamala Shila's commentary course. At the end of this course, we'll actually need to schedule an extra class. I am supposed to give an oral transmission of the Diamond Cutter Sutra, meaning I read it out loud and you listen to it. And that allows you to take that sutra and read it aloud to somebody else to pass on at least the lineage of the sutra. And we learn in the sutra itself that anywhere the sutra is read becomes a sacred place. So it's kind of a fun, sneaky thing. If there's some place in your neighborhood that lots of people gather at, that you go and read the Diamond Cutter Sutra there, because then when anybody comes to that place, they're gaining merit by just being there. Kind of like the fly around the stupa, you know. So once you have the transmission of the Diamond Cutter Sutra, you can use it in ways to make places sacred and clean out karma and do all kinds of fun stuff. All right, I'm still talking about the title. The Diamond Cutter Sutra. If you go looking in the sutra for those words, diamond cutter, it's interesting that they are not in the sutra at all. It's the title, but they're never actually said. And Geshe at first he thought that was curious because almost all the other sutras, you know, you can find where the title comes from inside the sutra, inside the teaching. But in this one, not at all. And he said it occurred to him that that's probably the most important part of the whole sutra is the fact that the words of the title are not in it. Like the most important part, the part that identifies the sutra, its title, is missing from the sutra. The sutra is a wisdom sutra. Wisdom sutra means it's really all about emptiness. Emptiness is the absence of self-nature of anything. So that titling it Diamond Cutter Sutra and not ever having those words in it is a clue to the message within the sutra. What's not in the sutra is more important than what's in the sutra. And Geshe says that's the subtlety with which all of the sutras are written. They just, for the most part, it passes over our heads. This one would have passed my head too if he hadn't pointed it out. And then with it pointed out, it just blows me away every time I get to teach that sutra again, to see how precise Lord Buddha is, even as to me, you know, understanding it as well as I think I do, it still seems like there are so many inconsistencies and contradictions. And I know because they title it Diamond Cutter and never use those words in the sutra, that it's my misunderstanding anything that I don't see as an explanation for emptiness. So for what it's worth. Dorje Chupa. But now, why is what's not in the sutra so important? Why is emptiness such an important topic that huge amounts of literature and training are devoted to explaining this thing called emptiness to us? And at the same time that they're explaining emptiness to us, they are saying, and you know what? Emptiness is not something that can be explained to anyone, right? As we're hearing it explained, as I'm even hearing me explain it, if I've not experienced it directly, I am misunderstanding it as I explain it accurately to you. And so it's very, very slippery. Because it seems like, well, then what's the use? Let's just go eat chocolate and watch movies. But no, because of the empty nature of even our understanding and misunderstanding, we can hear it, study it, misunderstand it, and plant seeds to come to experience it directly, from which we finally actually understand it, but not until we're out of it. So the importance of the Diamond Cutter Sutra not being in the sutra leads us to understanding where does the direct perception of emptiness fall in our effort to go from suffering human to fully enlightened being. And okay. So that led Geshe to describe the 5 paths, the classical 5 realizations that we will go through on our career path from suffering human to totally enlightened being. Technically, same 5 paths from suffering being to arhat, if that's our final goal. Same 5 paths, a little bit different thing happening. So we're speaking of these 5 paths from the highest capacity, from the perspective of a disciple on the path with their goal being total Buddhahood for the sake of all sentient beings. So the 5 paths in Tibetan are Soklam, Jorlam, Tonglam, Gomlam, and Miloblam. Some of you have heard about the 5 ducks at Diamond Mountain. That's what we named them. The Soklam means path of accumulation. And it can be easily misunderstood. What we're accumulating in the path of accumulation is enough disgust with worldly life that we're ready for something new and different. So technically, it's the path of renunciation. But if you use the word renunciation, it kind of sounds like, okay, on Soklam, I'm becoming a monk or a nun, and I'm giving up my family, and I'm going to go live in a monastery or under a bridge. But that's not renunciation at all. We can do that and be just as attached to our worldly way of being, just more miserable than we were before. Soklam is this period of time in which we're coming to recognize that just nothing ever goes right. And not only does nothing ever go right, in our world, it's impossible for anything to go right. And so you work and work and work, and we get some things and we lose some things, and we just think that's life. And then you die. And then you do it all over again if you're lucky enough to get another human life. And at some point, something happens. And we like, I don't know, some part of us wakes up a little bit. And we have that thought, there's something wrong with this picture, right? There must be a different way. There must be something wrong, right? I mean, I remember it. I remember where I was. I don't remember things very well, but that one I remember so clearly. And my guess is we all have that something, right? That was the trigger. I'm looking for something else here. And then it took me many years of searching to finally find. Anyway, that's all path of accumulation. And we can be on path of accumulation for lifetime. Then we've gathered enough goodness. Geshe says you move to Jorlam when you first hear the pen thing. right? The first time somebody describes the pen to you, puts you onto Jorlam. I love his simplicity. No, bless you. The first time you heard emptiness described well enough for it to catch your heart, right? Maybe lifetimes we've heard it and it was like, nah, the puppy sees the pen, right? Have you ever done it for somebody and they just go, nah, the puppy sees the pen, right? They just don't get it. We're going, wow, wow, wow. And they're going, nah, right? The lifetimes. And then we hear it and we connect to it. That puts us on this path of preparation. Path of preparation is called preparation because what we are doing then is preparing for Tonglam, preparing for our direct experience of ultimate reality. And we maybe don't even know that's what we're preparing for in Jorlan until we get to the higher stages of our path of preparation. But we're learning, we're studying, we're trying to change our behaviors based on what we're learning. We're gathering the goodness. And as we gather that goodness, the clarity of our vision of what we are wanting to achieve, what we're capable of achieving is getting clearer and clearer. And as that gets clearer and clearer, then our behavior like fine tunes directed towards this trigger that will move us onto the path of like direct towards that goal instead of from on Soklam and Jorlam, we're still like dancing around about it. So that trigger is the third path called Tonglam, which is the path of seeing. Which Soklam can be many lifetimes, Jorlam can still be many lifetimes, or it can be one really intense one. Tonglam takes 10, 15, 20 minutes for the direct perception, and then the rest of that day. So 24 hours. Tonglam. Called the path of seeing. It's the path, that's the realizations of the highest moment of Jorlam when we perceive that what we're perceiving is coming out of seeds in our own mind. And then we take that experience and we go, oh, sit in meditation. Our mind will show us that nothing exists in any other way than that. And if we're capable of deep enough meditation, the power of those seeds will push us into the direct perception of that ultimate reality. And I meant to stop and do a break before I went into Tonglam. So let's stop and break here. And I'll start that over on Tonglam. So where did my, oh, I knocked it out. Okay, so path of seeing is that experience, is the name of that experience that we call the direct perception of emptiness, which we'll talk about in much greater detail further on in these classes. We've heard Geshe Michael describe it. It is the threshold from which we go from ordinary human to what's called Arya being. You know what? I didn't write that down. I'll do it later. Arya is a Sanskrit word that means superior, but it means superior to what you yourself has ever perceived yourself to be. has nothing to do with comparing oneself to others. Geshe says it's like losing your virginity in this life. It happens once and you can't take it back, and you are forever changed because now you know something from direct experience that you didn't know before. Excuse me. Oh, no. I mean, about obstacles? Before, oh dear, before our direct perception of emptiness, not even a Buddha can know how long it will be before we ourselves become Buddha. When we've come out of the direct perception, every Buddha knows, and we do too, actually. And we'll talk about it. It's one of the things that we come out knowing for sure. Right? It's what we have to do, how long it's going to take, what it's going to be like. Very awesome. 24 hours goes by. A bunch of cool stuff happens. Sorry. And that puts us on the fourth path, Gomlang, path of habituation. Habituation meaning getting used to living according to what we now know is true. Because now we know that every instant of every moment of experience is my ripening karmas. And every interaction with those ripening karmas is planting new ones. And nothing exists in any other way than that. We know it from experience, which means, like, all of a sudden, what I think, say, do is creating my future, not intellectually, directly aware of planting seeds and what you need to plant and what you shouldn't plant. Are you perfect at it? No. Right? You've only actually lost 3 of 84,000 mental afflictions from your tomo. The rest need to be burnt off and not replanted. And it takes, Geshe said, anywhere from 10 years to 7 lifetimes to do that. 7 lifetimes after infinite, right? It's kind of a selling point for trying to reach our Tonglang, because otherwise, we don't know how much longer it's going to take. 7 lifetimes, what's that? Roughly 500 years. Sounds like a long time. But compare it to infinite, drop in a bucket, right? Nivoblum is a path of no more learning, it's called. It's another term for reaching our goal, Buddha. Buddha me. But Buddha me is not actually the goal. Buddha me is the start of our career. Like, we've been in training for infinite lifetimes to become Buddha. so that we can finally do what we're meant to do, which is annoy everybody with my terrible. You, Buddha, you will emanate to every being in your world to be what they need to bring them along their path. And so we finally reach the ability to do that. Yay. Studying Diamond Cutter Sutra is the key, we will see. Not just studying it, but using it to grow the seeds that we need to move us along our path. Jorlam, which we're all on. Tolam. Goma. Huh? In the end of our path of preparation, where we have that experience of the seeds ripening into the thing that we're seeing. And at that moment, that's the first moment that we've perceived deceptive reality for what it is. We've been perceiving deceptive reality since beginningless time. But we've never understood that we were misunderstanding. So it wasn't deceptive reality for us. We thought it was real reality. And it is real in the sense that this is solid, right? It is happening. But what we have perceived was never perceived accurately until our chucho, perceiving things as our own seeds ripening. That's the highest experience of deceptive reality. And that's what will push us into ultimate reality, which is nothing exists any other way than that. Really, it's that simple. When we're in ultimate reality, we aren't aware. We can't be aware of ourselves in ultimate reality because an experience of myself is deceptive reality. Myself is an appearing thing. It's deceptive reality. When we are directly experiencing the absence of being own natures, especially one's own nature, that absence, you aren't actually aware that you're doing it at the time. You can't. And yet, right, it's seeds ripening. It's still seeds ripening. There is still subject-object interaction between. Not like your body disappears. It's not like reality disappears. But the experience is the experience they call non-duality. Again, we'll talk about it more because it's a slippery concept. It's not subject-object interaction are all one thing. It's not, me and the universe, one thing. It's that the absence of the individual natures of anything. When we come out of it, that's when we go, oh. And then the sutra itself says, yeah, and so when Arya thinks to himself, oh, I'm an Arya, do you think that's thought truly, spoken truly? And the answer is going to be no. We'll see. Why? And okay. So they call the one who's trying to explain what the direct perception of emptiness is like will say, oh, chula chu shakpa, that's Tibetan. So were the questions, Lynn, who asked. These are Tibetan. So what's it like in the direct perception of emptiness? They say, oh, chula chu shakpa, like water poured into water. Meaning you pour water into water, you can't separate them, right? You can't tell the difference. But that analogy just completely falls short. It only means that while you're in the direct perception, you won't know you're in it. But it's an important thing to kind of think about because it's a big conundrum. Right? How can I have an experience that I don't know I'm having and plant seeds for it that are so profound? And the answer is yes. Ooh, that's too. So when you come out of your tonglam, your path of seeing, and you're in that 24-hour period where these different realizations are coming to you, Geshe-la says every Arya's mind will turn to trying to find something that can serve as a reminder of the profundity of what they saw. They're looking for something that could represent for them as an ultimate. They come out knowing I just was not, they wouldn't say that. That was ultimate reality. Like, oh my God. And then you want something, you're back in deceptive reality. You can't see it as seeds ripening. You know it is, but you can't see it. And you desperately want something to remind you of that ultimate reality. And Geshe-la says every Arya, wow, in this world, will think diamond. And you know, that's a long time ago. And so I thought, I don't know, I'll bet science has come up with something harder than diamond. So I Googled it today. You know, what's the hardest thing? And omniscient Google says diamond. That even now, diamonds are considered the hardest thing because they're unscratchable by anything other than another diamond. You can smash a diamond with a hammer. You can use a laser to cut a hole through it. But if you take something and try to cut it, the something that you use will get destroyed and the diamond will not. It takes another diamond to cut a diamond. And even then it has to be, you know, along the plane of something, I don't know. So it is still true that a diamond is the closest thing that we have in our reality to an ultimate. Is it ultimate? No, right? There's nothing in deceptive reality that is ultimate. There's not a longest, you can always add a millimeter. There's not a fattest, there's not a shortest, there's not a best, there's not a worst. There's no ultimate in our reality. And that's actually the point of the cutter in the Diamond Cutter Sutra, is without the cutter, we think, oh, diamonds, they're ultimate. They'll teach me how to become a Buddha. And it's like, no, they won't, right? Because they are nowhere close to this thing that is the ultimate, which is the no self nature of those diamonds and the ones who are perceiving the diamonds and the perceiving of the diamond. So there are three ways in which the diamond serves as the metaphor for emptiness. And it's one of your homework questions. The first is that in our deceptive reality, a diamond is considered the ultimately hard thing. Emptiness is ultimate reality. So in that way, you make that connection. The second way in which diamond is considered a good metaphor for emptiness, like a good reminder, is that if you had a window pane of diamond, it doesn't matter how thick it would be. If it's pure diamond, meaning it has no, little carbon flecks in it, you could see through it as clearly. A mile thick one you could see through as clearly as a quarter-inch one. Diamond is perfectly clear. It's so perfectly clear that if there was no light bouncing off of it, you wouldn't even know it was there. You would technically, think that was a doorway and smack into it because it's so clear. A window, right? If you take a pane of glass and you turn it on edge and you look down it, the window's clear, but the edge is like blue-green. Windows aren't clear. So the diamond, the clearness of the diamond relates to emptiness in the sense that the empty nature of every existing thing is all around us. It's not that emptiness is a thing that we're moving through. It's that every perception of every instant of everything all has the nature of having no nature of its own, and that's its emptiness. So even the space between things is an object of awareness that is empty of self-nature. So it's like we're walking through this diamond window and we just don't know it's there. We can't see it. We don't see it. We're moving through this ultimate reality constantly. We are ultimate reality constantly, but we can't perceive it. Even after your 20-minute tolong and you come out of it, you can't just sit right down in meditation and see it directly again. You can think about it and you can imagine it, but you're conceptualizing and it won't be the same. Must be kind of frustrating. So you know it's there. You're not seeing it directly. We can know it's there even before we've seen it directly if we train our minds to think that way. Okay? It's part of what comes out of, I want to say, course 13 is, fine-tuning our how we see our world such that you can look at something and trigger this. I know it's empty, right? I know it's empty. I know it's empty. I know it's empty. But it takes effort to do. So ultimately hard thing, clear, emptiness is all around us. We don't see it. Third one is that if you take a pure diamond and you smash it, every single piece of that diamond is equally pure as its original one. Like diamond's made of carbon and I guess nothing else. So every little piece is still made of carbon and nothing else. And in that way, it reminds us of emptiness in the sense that every object's emptiness is 100% lacking the object's identity in it. So the emptiness of this pen is identical as the emptiness of Buddha. 100% no self nature is what we mean by emptiness. Are they one and the same? Is this the emptiness of a Buddha? No. But it's identical in the same way that every little sliver of diamond is identical diamond-wise to the original that it came out of and to every other little piece. Every emptiness is identical to every other emptiness. 100% no self nature, never 50%, 30%, 90%, all or nothing. So these three ways, the diamond is a metaphor for ultimate reality. One, it's the closest thing to an ultimate in our world, reminds us of ultimate reality. Number two, it's perfectly clear, meaning we didn't know it was there, we wouldn't know it was there. Emptiness is that. Three, every existence of a thing, its emptiness is identical to every other existence of a thing or a person or a thought or an emotion or a mental affliction. They're all identical. So diamond, a perfect analogy. Use diamonds. Surround yourself with diamonds, says Geshe Michael. Maybe even go and work for a diamond company. Long story there, we know most of it. But so why not call it the Diamond Sutra if diamonds are so important in our remembering our Tonglam or cultivating our Tonglam? Because diamonds is part of deceptive reality, appearing reality. We can't help, if we're not Arya, we can't help but see a diamond and believe that it's a perfect analogy for emptiness in it from it. We're perceiving it wrongly. We can't help it. So skillfully, Lord Buddha or somebody says, no, diamond cutter, to point out that the diamond as a metaphor for emptying is not even close. It's the best we've got in deceptive reality, but it's totally cut by the direct perception of emptiness, totally cut by ultimate reality. You know, we have the slang in English, that just doesn't cut it, right? When something's unacceptable. Geshe said, it's like that. Diamond's the closest thing, but it just doesn't cut it. Ultimate reality is an absence. Diamonds are presences, appearances. There's no such thing as appearances in ultimate reality. Is there no such thing as appearances at all? No, because if there were no appearances, there'd be no emptiness. It takes both to have either. And when we are directly communing with the ultimate reality of ourselves and our world, it will be as if there is no appearances. because we can't be in deceptive reality and ultimate reality both at the same time until we are omniscient. Yeah. See? So reaching the direct perception of emptiness becomes this major milestone in our spiritual career if we're serious about it. Sorry, I lost my place in my notes. And it seems almost impossible to achieve. It's like we understand a little bit so far that every experience we have is a ripening result of something that we thought, said, did towards an other before. So it seems like if we're trying to bring on for ourselves this ultimate experience of the direct perception of emptiness, don't we have to have given it to someone else before? And if I don't have it, how can I give it? So I'm stuck, right? I'm not ever going to be able to ripen the seeds of my own direct perception of emptiness because it's something I can't give to anyone else. But what's wrong with that logic is that it's missing the piece, the important piece, that seeds grow. Okay? If seeds didn't grow, we'd be in, what was that, Groundhog Day movie? Same again and again and again, but we never do the same thing. We never experience the same thing twice, do we? It may seem like it, but we don't. So Geshe-la says, it's rare that someone can hear about seeing emptiness directly and then just go sit down and do it. Is it possible? Of course, right? Anything's possible with seeds ripening. For most of us, it does take some conscious seed planting effort and conscious, like, seed fertilizing effort to move ourselves along that path to that experience. Is it impossible? Absolutely not, says Geshe Michael. And is it worth the effort? He says, from personal experience, absolutely. Now, when he was first teaching this in the 90s, he had not come out and told people about his realization. So we have this, right, extra advantage of having heard directly that it's possible for someone. And I don't know, maybe that's helpful, maybe it's discouraging, I hope not. But it is doable. And as we understand about karmic seeds, then we go, well, what kinds of things do I need to be working on here? If that really is the front end goal for reaching my career path as Buddha me. And then there's a whole bunch, and that's what the whole ACI Foundation courses are about, that you could think them through. One would need to have the ability to sit down into a deep meditation that can be sustained at the level that's necessary for the 20-minute direct perception of emptiness. And the lineage says it takes probably an hour, hour and a half of daily regular meditation training to have the capacity to sustain 20 minutes at the level of the direct perception of emptiness. So similar to training as an athlete. No, Shayla does marathons. She doesn't train by doing marathons every day. She trains, this way, this way, this way, this way. And then she has enough training hours that when it's time for a race, she can sustain herself through the race time. Same with any kind of training, piano, right? Hours and hours of scales and whatever in order to pull off a 1 hour performance. Now, I suspect we all have something that we've applied ourselves to, trained ourselves in, gotten reasonably good at, probably helped others get reasonably good at it along the way, that we could use as, hey, I want those seeds directed towards my seeing emptiness directly. They don't have to be, oh, I taught people meditation. Have we ever taught someone something new? Have we ever brought someone to a new experience? Have I myself ever trained myself diligently and gotten good at something? Right? All of those are rejoiceable seeds. But they also tell us what we can be doing to help others to cultivate more of those seeds. Helping others learn something new, not interrupting their mind, helping them cultivate their concentration. Wherever you see that you need some extra seeds, right, you build at that place. Another factor is on our path of preparation, our Jorlam. That path is about the training, but also the gaining the learning. Study, study, study. Listen to teaching, go to classes, apply ourselves to learning new material, bring other people with you, right? Help others learn that stuff as well. Hours and hours of listening to the pen thing yet again, right? Oh, come on, do I have to hear it again? Yes. Hours and hours of pretending you're telling the pen thing to somebody else. Like so many retreats, like I would in my imagination teach my dog, teach my neighbor, right? And I don't know, in my own mind, they'd come up with all these cool questions that I didn't come up with when I was learning, and then I'd address them right there, in my meditation. And it led to the opportunity to share with other people with a greater confidence. Then another factor that we need is that we need to be ethically really clean. And this is what's pointed out in Diamond Cutter's Sutra again and again and again. Is he talking about emptiness, and then suddenly he's talking about morality. And then emptiness again, and then morality. And Buddha doesn't say, look, you get it? The two are related. He leaves it up to us to figure that out. So thank goodness for commentaries. But why? Like, what's morality got to do with seeing emptiness directly? And at one level, it's like if seeing emptiness directly is this incredibly powerful goodness, it can only be a result of goodness seeds planted, and lots of them that are growing. Goodness seeds mean, yes, that's great. That goodness, sorry, I lost my train of thought. Goodness seeds means avoiding harming others. Right? When you have the opportunity on the sidewalk, there's the line of ants, you can be not paying attention and you scoot your foot right through them, or you're paying attention and you step over them. Okay? Protecting life, protecting others' property, protecting others' relationships. speaking truthfully, speaking sweetly, speaking to bring people together, speaking purposefully or not at all, being happy when others get what they want or get what you want. Technically being unhappy when others are having misfortune, but more importantly, being willing to help others in their misfortune, whether you like them or not. And then correct worldview, maintaining that understanding, my seed's ripening, my seed's ripening, my seed's ripening. Mm. To to uh, to try to meditate deeply enough to take us to the single pointed concentration. Our conscious needs to be clear. Conscience needs to be clear. Right? If we've got ugliness of behavior in our pockets, that's going to interfere with deep meditation because deep meditation is such a goodness. Ugliness blocks goodness. Right? So we learn the methods of recognizing and purifying and cleaning out past yuck so that we can be clear of it so that our efforts in meditation can be more productive. Our moment to moment efforts are not productive. They're seed planting. And we direct them all to this particular ripening, right? They will accumulate. So study ethical living. That's the third one. Train in that deep concentration. Learn how to meditate properly. Start with 5 minutes. Every week, go up by 1 minute. In a year, you're sitting for an hour. Your whole life has adjusted because it adjusts 1 minute a week. But learn the proper technique, the method. And then just like learning to play the piano, do the drills again and again and again. Regularity is more important than being good at it. If you remember whatever training you were training in, you trained your hour or two a day. It didn't matter if you had a head cold. You went and trained anyway. There were some days that your training was just lousy. You couldn't do anything right. And you went back the next day and the next day, and finally you had some good days, right? It all accumulates. It's not like one day you'll sit down and you can force yourself into shamatha meditation. But train, 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 and then it starts to happen. All right. So that gives you what you need for class 1. And I have 12 extra minutes that I'm putting in the bank because I have some classes that have like 30 pages of notes. And so I'll end up going long. And I'm going to do it in this class. I don't usually, but I think it's important to not split it up. So I hope that your schedules will allow me to go late. I will pull from my bank of short classes, which I've accumulated quite a few, I believe. Anyway, thanks again to Flavia for making this available in Spanish for people. Remember that person that you wanted to be able to help? We've learned a lot just so far that we will use sooner or later to help them in that deep and ultimate way. And that's an extraordinary goodness. So please be happy with yourself. And think of this goodness like a beautiful glowing gemstone that you can hold in your hands. Recall your own precious holy beings. See how happy they are with you. Grow your gratitude to them, your reliance upon them. Ask them to please stay close, to continue to guide you, help you, inspire you. And then offer them this gemstone of goodness. See them accept it and bless it. And they carry it with them right back into your heart. See them there, feel them there. Their love, their compassion, their wisdom. It feels so good. We want to keep it forever. And so we know to share it by the power of the goodness that we've just done. May all beings complete the collection of merit and wisdom, and thus gain the two ultimate bodies that merit and wisdom make. So use those 3 long exhales to share this goodness with that one person. The second, to share it with everyone you love. The third, to share it with every being everywhere. See everyone filled with happiness, filled with loving kindness. We don't know where it came from, and it doesn't matter. May it be so. All right. Any questions that were being held? Yes, no.
Yes, I have a
Okay.
question.
Yes, please, Lynn.
Yes. To me, I heard Geshe Makoros say we should listen to or tell band story at least 3,000 times.
Right.
Yes. In my case, I often tell band story alone. Yes. Because I don't have many time to tell bad story for my children, for my friend. So I tell it for myself alone, front of altar. Yes, and I image around me have many living beings. Many beings, and they are also listening to the bad story too.
That counts.
That's all right.
Yes, that's good.
Oh, yes. Yes.
Very good.
Yeah. Yes. Thank you. Thank you so much.
I have a question, dear Lama. You said that when we reach the ultimate reality, we don't have the awareness of self. When somebody becomes a Buddha, do they have awareness of self?
That's one of those questions that any way I answer it, a non-Arya will misunderstand what I'm saying. But that said, I will say yes, but not the way we think.
Okay. Thank you. Okay, thank you. And I have another question. I heard Geshe was saying, and maybe I misunderstood, that sometime in the kitchen, he was looking at the kettle and he saw a picture coming over the kettle. And this was sometime in a different moment from the moment when he was in the garden and this experience of emptiness happened. So does it mean that he saw it twice, the picture, or?
No, his book, The Garden, is a novel.
Oh, okay. It's so
Written after, right? After his direct perception, after, right? Novel, The Garden was written, I think, just before he went into Great Retreat.
so it's a
So-
collection of
Right.
and the experience with the kettle and him seeing the picture is actually when it happened.
Right. In the monastery in New Jersey.
Thank you.
Yeah, we'll talk about it in greater detail in this book.
Thank you.
Anything else?
No, thank you.
All right, my dears, thank you for coming back. Thank you for the opportunity to share. Everybody's on the mailing list, right? Email, Lynn, you've got everybody got it. Okay, so the ladies will deal with the recording and the YouTube, and you'll hear from them, I guess, right? Okay. All right, thanks, everyone. Do your homeworks. Thanks, Jem. Okay, bye-bye. Stopping the recording.
Thank you.
Stopping the recording. Yes. The recording. Stopping the meeting. Remember how to do this. I'm out of practice.